President Ramaphosa, President Obama, Mama Michelle, Dr. Patrice Motsepe, and so many distinguished guests out there who have graced our occasion with your presence. And ladies and gentlemen, all of you from far and near. On behalf of the trustees of the Nelson Mandela Foundation, I welcome you to the 16th Nelson Mandela Annual Lecture. Thank you for joining us in your numbers to remember Madiba on the eve of what would have been his 100th birthday, and for doing so by coming to listen to a lecture by an extraordinary leader, President Barack Obama. This is the biggest Nelson Mandela lecture we have ever hosted, something eminently appropriate, I think, for the centenary. Our late trustee, the Venerable Ahmed Kathrada, never stopped demanding that we should hold the lecture in a stadium. Today, he has finally got his wish. "28 years ago, with one hand clasped around the hand of Mama Winnie Madikizela Mandela, the other raised in a fist, Nelson Mandela walked out of Victor Verster prison into a country waiting for his leadership. Would he, outside prison at last, continue to inspire as much as he had done when he was inside? In a racially polarized society where political friends and enemies were frighteningly easy to identify by skin color, few South Africans were aware just how Mandela's release represented a unique and unexpected ways the complex art of the possible. It required that he take enormous personal risks to lay foundations for a negotiated end to over 3 centuries of racist, economic, and social oppression in South Africa. He had to find a way of cutting across embedded histories, structures of governing, and the human attitudes they had given life to over time. He had to find a way for South Africans to begin to see one another differently. It was a task that required a particular kind of leader. Now, for this particular leader, there are countless anecdotes that individually capture some essence of him. The anecdotes collected recently and published in one of our centenary publications, which bears the title, "I Remember Nelson Mandela," makes for a most joyous read that I recommend. These anecdotes are told by many from various stations of life who worked for Madiba or for his organizations. But today I want to recall a personal all-time favorite anecdote of mine. It is not in that book. Richard Stengel, who collaborated with Nelson Mandela on his autobiography, The Long Walk to Freedom, tells that particular one. And here it goes. We were once on this airplane flight down in Natal, and it was a prop plane. I think there were 6 seats in it, and there were maybe 4 of us in the plane. As soon as he gets in an airplane, he, Madiba, picks up a newspaper. He adores newspapers. For many years, he didn't have them and revels in the touch of them. And he reads every stupid story. And so we were sitting in this plane. The plane was up, and he was reading his newspaper. And we were about, I don't know, halfway there. And I saw, to my great horror, that the propeller had stopped going round. And he said very, very calmly, Richard, you might want to inform the pilot that the propeller isn't working. I said, yes, Madiba. I walked to the front of the plane, and the pilot was, of course, well aware of it, and said, go back and sit down. We've called the airport. They have the ambulances out there, and they are going to coat the runway with foam or whatever they do. So I went back and told that to Madiba, and he just, in that very solemn way of his, mouth sort of down, listened and said, yes. And then picked up his newspaper and started reading. I was terrified, and I calmed myself by looking at him, and he was as calm as could be, like the prisoners on Robben Island that must have looked at him when they felt scared. He just looked as calm as could be. Well, the plane landed safely while Madiba retained his calm and flustered expression all the way as we stopped off the plane. But when they entered the airport, Madiba took advantage of a quiet moment with Stengel to make an unexpected confession. Man, he said, I was scared up there. So Madiba was able to put up the armor of self-composure to mask the turmoil and fear and uncertainty that was churning inside of him. The best part is by far in his honesty, to give words to his fears at the appropriate moment. There's a certain grandeur to it. This story displays something else about Madiba. It shows up Madiba, the politician, surprisingly, Madiba, the actor. He could enter the universe of all those he met, each and every one of them, at home and everywhere in the world, and be remembered universally for the genuineness of that particular moment. The actor in him was able to remove from the politician any semblance of guile, at the same time that the politician gave to the actor the semblance of power to effect change. In him, we could see an intriguing coexistence of power and beauty. It is a coexistence of attributes that he bequeathed to us in the hope that 24 years after the birth of our constitutional democracy, we will be more powerful and even more beautiful. Through Madiba the actor, displayed in this anecdote, I want to pay tribute, therefore, to all actors, artists, writers, dancers, musicians, who in their different art forms are able to feel intensely the characters they become, the thoughts they think, the feelings and emotions they feel deeply. They make real the experience of being truly alive. And being truly alive is what all South Africans today have to become once more, through an act of will and the courage to be clear-minded and steadfast in moments that require them to be courageous. There are many South Africans today in government, in their political parties, in offices of traditional authority, in their trade unions, in their churches, in their schools, and in their governing councils, and in their sports associations. They all play important leadership roles, but some will, by willful intent, have caused the propeller of the airplane of state to stop going round in midair, and who will go on to read a newspaper, see themselves in it, and pretend to be completely innocent. Some will even call a press conference and then say nothing at it. These are the characters that actors get to play as the bad guy. We saw in our Madiba anecdote the ability in a leader to suppress inner fears in order to be brave for other people. That way, people sharing a genuinely dangerous and precarious moment with a leader draw courage from a leader in the appearance of courage displayed by him. He then owns up to that moment later by revealing the fear he experienced after the fact. That way, he enables us to participate in the personal yet public dimensions of being human. I call on all those among our leaders who wear the faces of innocence to stop being the bad guy, step out of the airplane of those whose propeller they had willfully stopped, and after a safe landing, emerge from that plane and say, "Man, I have been corrupt." I am certain that Madiba would have approved as you do. Let us remember those 4 years of difficult negotiations in which, despite some significant loss of life, South Africans did not slide into a bloodbath of a racial war. Madiba's campus remained steadfast and trusted. With the birth of a new democracy achieved, Madiba, as president of the new Republic of South Africa, spent 5 years building constitutional, legislative, political, economic, and social coherence to support and promote a new democracy. Let us remember that the South African Constitution and the society envisaged by it placed participative humanity and belonging at its core. Such would be the country that Madiba dreamed of. His dreams were shared at the time by all political parties, trade unions, business institutions, civil society organizations, communities, and families throughout the land that all agreed to work together in a constitutional democracy to achieve these dreams. No one ever before, none ever before, had been head of state of South Africa for all the people of South Africa. Tirelessly, he worked to ensure that our democracy would become more strong. Indeed, it was strong enough to survive the predations and devastations of the last 10 years. Too many South Africans in that time have been left behind. Too many have become deeply alienated. Too many believe they have nothing to lose. The new governing party administration has provided strong evidence of a determination to clean up and fix broken institutions and restore the best hopes of a nation. but the demand from those left behind is for a fundamental transformation of our society. We give strength to our new president to rise to the occasion the challenge with all of us fellow citizens by his side. Now, 10 years ago, progressive people around the world welcomed the election of a new president of the United States, Barack Obama. A leader who sought to bring hope and renewed optimism to a democracy more than 200 years old. To many, the Obama presidency offered the United States a dream of a global future that people could aspire to, one that inspired belief in human solidarities that could be forged across national, economic, social, and cultural divides. The realities of office, of course, tested him to the limit. Embedded histories and resilient structures of power proved to be formidable obstacles. Inclusivity as a democratic ideal had not become strong enough over the centuries of democracy to keep at bay racism, official forms of violence, and class-based insecurities that take on an ethnic, racial, and nationalistic forms of expression. To many observers, what we came to see in South Africa as a state capture seemed mirrored in the United States and other parts of the world by what we could call more accurately a capture of democracy. In this scenario, hostile forces to democracy ultimately attain legitimate electoral mandates only to subvert them. Public discourse shifts from the language of social cohesion to that of validating membership in what could be called political tribes. The persistence of structural racism and of denialism in relation to received structural privilege deepens historic divides, as do the whims of the market, structured through 5 centuries of global capitalism. Consequently, multitudes of people across the world live below basic poverty levels on the margins of in every other sense. In the centenary year of Nelson Mandela, we welcome the voice of President Obama to this platform. He has confronted the global challenges I have alluded to in ways that very few have. He has been in the crucible in ways reminiscent of Madiba during the dangerous, turbulent years of the 1990s here in South Africa. He has things to tell us which are worth listening to. He has ideas which I believe will need us to strive to hear the call of justice and begin to reimagine democracy. To conclude, let us find the Madiba in each of us. Let us be the legacy. Let's be the citizen who creates with other citizens our common future to restore beauty, purpose, dignity, and strength to our country. Let us be enriched by this beautiful day. I thank you.